Hello, everyone, and welcome to Life with Legends. I'm Justin Bell, and my guest today is Ed Pink. To be honest, what I know about engine building is pretty bloody pathetic, considering my livelihood depended on them working at high capacity for hours on end, and I know nothing about them. I've always regarded engine builders as mysterious, wizard-like creatures that work their magic far away from the bright lights of the racetrack. On the last part, I think I'm actually right. But there is one name that is part of racing folklore, and that is Ed Pink. He's now a sprightly 91 years old and still builds the odd engine at his shop in Newbury Park, California. He was just fantastic to sit down and talk with, and I found myself captivated by his life story. A huge part of the California drag racing scene, as well as sports cars, Indycar, and so much more. Ed could make an engine sing like no other. He just had that touch that teams and manufacturers would pay dearly for. I really love the conversation, but I still think he's a wizard. That's perfect. Well, Ed, thank you so much for having me to your shop.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
Yeah, I got to say that when I saw you at the Busby thing, Jim's celebration, 50 years, I was looking around that room and I was going, if a bomb went off in here, the whole history of California racing would go in one go,
yeah,
right?
Well, because just about everybody that's anybody was there.
Everybody that was anybody was there. Yeah, it was a very special evening.
Yeah.
Yeah, and of course, I mean, we can start back at the beginning in a minute, but I had no clue you'd done the 962 engines until when I walked in and he was talking about you, and then I saw you. It jogged my memory, and I was like, that was amazing. What was it like when you suddenly got asked to do a 962 engine?
Well, it was hectic, I'll tell you, because when he had said to me the reason he was there to see me was he wanted me to take over the engine program on his 962. At that time, I had a 1978 911 that I drove in the street. And the only thing I knew about it was that where to put oil and where to put gas.
Yeah, really? Yeah, that's funny. So, and obviously the 962 program was such a big deal. I mean, yeah. Porsche racing. Did you feel, I know we're just jumping ahead, but it's sort of, that's my life, with Dad and sports cars.
Well, this deal, are you recording now?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. This deal, when Busby offered it to me, I told him, I said, I've never rebuilt a Porsche or been inside of one of the engines. He says, it won't be a problem. He says, we're going to send you to Porsche. And I says, really? He says, yeah. We're going to send you Weissach. I said, you sure you can? He said, well, I'll check on it, but that's what we're going to do. And he called me back about 4 days later and said, if you get your plane reservations, you're on your way to Porsche. So I went to Weissach, and I spent two weeks in the engine department, and they were really good to me. It took a few days for them to realize.
You knew what you were doing?
Well, no, that I wasn't there for the overthrow of the German government or going to try to take over Porsche, that I was there as an engine guy wanting to learn about the Porsche engine.
Yeah.
And then they really, the relationship really got better. But they took me in the Formula One department because they were doing Formula One at the time. And they showed me the engines there. And then they took me into the regular Porsche engine department there at Weissach. And I spent 2 weeks with their engine guys taking 962 engines apart and putting them together and putting them on the dyno. And the whole thing, it was a great experience.
What was it? So it was a great experience, but what was it like, as you say, you go in there, you were already firmly established as the guy here in the hot rods and the funny cars. So arguably you were probably bigger in stature than anyone at Porsche was in their own way. Did they know that when you got there? Did they know?
I don't know. If they did, they didn't do anything to make me think that. I just, as far as I was concerned, when I went there, I was just a regular guy there to learn the Porsche engine. And they had their ways of doing things. The one thing that I did notice that they don't do here is when they run an engine on the dyno, if it's lunchtime and the engine's running, they just go to lunch and leave it running.
Do they?
Yeah.
Unmonitored?
Yeah. I mean, I was there helping them with one of the engines we had on the dyno, and I said to them, I got to go to the toilet. So they said, okay. And I left, went to the toilet, and I was gone maybe 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And when I came back, there's nobody there, but the engine's running.
You must have been looking around going, what?
Yeah, I'm looking around to find out. And then finally I went in the lunch area, and there the three guys are sitting having their lunch. And, I mean,
just different culture.
Different culture.
What was it, if they were telling this side of the story, what do you think they would say about this funny guy called Ed Pink who turned up? What did you think you taught them?
I don't know if I taught them anything. I think the one thing they learned that I was very serious about what I was doing, and that I really wanted to learn the Porsche engines, because I had a big nut to crack once I got back to the States. Because when I came back home, then I had to take my guys and teach them what I just learned, and I had to make sure that I didn't leave anything out. But it was quite an experience with the Porsche engines. But in the same token, before we did the Porsche engine, we were at Indianapolis doing Cosworth.
Okay.
So I already had the background of high-speed racing, not quarter-mile drag racing.
Totally different demands for an engine, right? Yeah.
Because I went from drag racing to Indycar racing, and that was a huge deal. But the Porsche was a big deal too, because I had experience with normally aspirated engines on gasoline, alcohol, nitro. I had experience with supercharged engines on nitro and alcohol. Now I'm going to a gasoline engine, turbocharged, air-cooled. That's a big deal.
A lot of change.
Yeah.
And when you got back, didn't you end up creating like mad horsepower from the Porsche engine for Busby?
Not to start with.
Not to start with,
Not
okay.
to start with. To start with, the engine's made about 675 horsepower.
Yeah.
And but when Busby hired me to do this project, he told me, he says, I want the biggest and baddest Porsche engine out there.
Yeah.
He says, I'm not making a change just to have another Porsche engine.
Yeah.
He says, I got to have the best one, and you give me the best engine, and we'll take care of the car deal.
Wow.
And at the time, he had Bob Wallach driving for him, and he had Mauro Baldi. So he had good guys, good drivers. He had better drivers than he had engines.
Yeah.
So, we went to work on the engine, but the biggest obstacle we had with the Porsche engine was the fact that until we learned how to change the motronic system, you can't make more power if you can't put more fuel in it or change the spark lead around or the rev limiter or boost or whatever. And the motronic system was one that Bosch had developed for Porsche. And it was an exclusivity deal. And so I had friends at Bosch, but that didn't do me any good because the program was done for Porsche. And they told me if I needed to know anything, I need to call Porsche. So through my acquaintances I made at Porsche while I was there for the 2 weeks, I called, and basically the Porsche system, the motronic system, runs on an EEPROM. It isn't actually done by a computer. And the EEPROM is what controls the fuel, and the spark lead, and the boost, and so forth. And they weren't going to give me that information at all. And they told me, they said they'll give me EEPROMs, but it's EEPROMs that they've done there in Germany. And I understood that because at the time, the fastest and best cars were the Porsches.
Yeah.
So Porsche's racing Porsche.
Yeah.
So there's no reason for Porsche to extend the life of their engine that would be an ego thing.
Yeah.
And I understood that.
And it was big business, right? They were selling customer cars, engines all over the world.
Correct. But in the same token, I'm in a different position. I'm an independent race engine shop, and I'm doing engines for Jim Busby, and he's telling me what he wants. So we spent quite a few months, my engineer and myself, and we working on the Motronic system, and we finally were able to crack the code.
Jeez.
And I mean, as we got into it, we found it was almost like World War II going all over again with it, because we would think we got figured it out, and as we go down the line with it, all of a sudden it ends up like you're at the top of a mountain. You look out, and there's nothing there. It just ends.
Yeah.
But eventually, we figured out how to crack the code, and once we cracked the code, then we could raise the compression in the engine. We could change the fuel. We could change the spark. And we didn't reinvent the Porsche engine. It's still the Porsche air-cooled 6-cylinder flat engine. And we used the Porsche crankshaft rods, pistons, and all the Porsche stuff. So we didn't reinvent the wheel. We just made the wheel better.
Fantastic.
And we ended up with 850 horsepower.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Busby must have been so freaking happy.
Yeah, he was happy, and they're unfortunately, they're sponsored by B.F. Goodrich, and Goodrich is a good company.
Oh yeah.
And they're good tires, but they didn't. The tire wasn't as good as Goodyear because, that's what Goodyear does.
Yeah. So you made the engine so good, but the tires wouldn't handle.
The tires wouldn't handle it.
Wow. What's it like as a? I've talked to engineers, race engineers, and things, and you can see. Well, I've been with them. I've seen it happen. There's that moment when they crack. You set the car right, or they come back with something new on the aero, and you suddenly realize you've got a faster car, and everybody has that feeling of achieving something, of cracking, as you say, like the code, cracking the next level. But your work is done before they get to the track. Your work is done in places like this. What was it like for you? You had the dyno figures. Describe the feeling of personal achievement for you and your team when you suddenly see it run like that.
Well, we felt good about it, but the thing is that you're continually working. You're always trying to make it better. You got to make it live first, and then you build the power.
Yeah.
A lot of engine guys, they worry about the power first, and we don't. We worry about the reliability of the engine, and then we worry about how to make it better. And we felt good about it. The power it made. It was almost. I can remember the first time that we ran it when it made that power. We were at Portland, and that's the one where has a long straightaway.
Yeah.
And the pits are right there. And Bob Wallach was driving the car, and he went by Al Holbert like Al Holbert was standing still down the straightaway for everybody to see.
Whoa.
And I remember we went to Atlanta, and I was friends with Andile.
Yeah, with Alvin.
Alvin. But I remember in the pits, he came over to me, and he said, "I need to talk to you. Let's get my rent-a-car." So we got in his rent-a-car, and he said to me, he says, "I understand that that engine makes 850 horsepower." And I said, "Yeah." He says, "Did you have to tell everybody?" And I said, "Well, I didn't. The only ones I told were the owner of the car." He said, "Well, you shouldn't be telling anybody." He says, "You're making me look bad."
Oh.
So I said, "Alan, let me tell you something. You have your business to run, and I have my business to run. And I don't go around bragging what I'm doing, but when I'm doing engines for a person and they want to know where I'm at, I tell them. And if they told other people, there's nothing I can do about it." I said, "But, I'm not Porsche. I'm an independent engine builder." And
You were just doing your job.
Yeah, and people come to me because my engines run good and live. And if they don't do either one of those two things, my phone doesn't ring.
Good for you.
Yeah.
He was like, oh,
No, he wasn't too happy about it. In fact, he was very unhappy. But, that's what the engine made. It made, in fact, it was 851 horsepower. But, with we were able to crack the Motronic code and build our own EEPROMs, because I bought an EEPROM burner so that I could take an EEPROM that's all programmed and put it in the burner, and it takes all the information out of it.
okay.
So I got a blank thing to start over with. And I remember that in doing it, we were able to raise the rev limiter up
Yeah.
to whatever we wanted. We could add as much fuel to it as we wanted.
How did that affect the turbo?
We went and had new turbos made.
Oh, you did?
I had the turbocharger goes along with the fuel system. I had a real good friend that worked at Air Research. And up till then, we've been running a Triple K turbo, which are okay, but they really didn't have the map that I wanted.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I went to my friend at Air Research and showed him what we had and what I want to do, and asked him, can you build me a turbocharger? And he says, yes, I can. I'll be happy to. So they built me a turbocharger to match what we were doing, fuel and spark and rev limiter and boost-wise. And that between what we were able to do with the EEPROMs and the turbochargers what made the big deal.
What a story.
Yeah.
So you mentioned World War II. You were born right in the middle of it.
1931.
1930, well, before World War II, 1931.
Yeah.
Wow, jeez.
Yeah.
What does that feel like now? I mean, that's 19...
When I don't think about it, it doesn't bother me too much.
Really? Yeah.
But when I think about it, I think, God, I've seen a lot.
Yeah. Describe that before because you have. I'm interested to hear your perspective on the world we live in and racing and engines and cars. But in 1931, between the world wars, you were a teenager then when the war was finishing in Europe.
Yeah. In World War II, I was like 15 years old.
Wow.
I wanted to go in, but I was too young. Yeah,
Okay.
No, I wanted to go in and do my part, but I was too young.
Too young. But what was... Everyone always talks about the hot rod explosion in America, post World War II, when everyone came back, and obviously you were right in the middle of that. But before you could get involved, you went to Korea. You fought in Korea.
Yeah, I went to Korea in 1950. I was drafted in 1951.
Oh, you were? So you're 20 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah. Talk about that experience. What was it like being drafted?
It wasn't a good experience.
No.
Because the thing is, I thought the Korean War was a political deal.
Mm-hmm.
To a point. It is what got it going. And I was right in the middle of my hot rod stuff, starting to do engines and trying to go to the next level when I got my draft notice. And I had a 1936 Ford Coupe with a hopped up flathead in it.
Yeah.
And it was really a nice car. And I was so disillusioned when I got drafted, I sold the car for $315.
No.
And it was a beautiful 36. And but there's a story involved in that too. But and then I went to Korea and I spent 15 months there.
Can you, for someone of our age, my age, like my son's 18, and he's actually at military college in the Citadel in Charleston. He wanted to be an Army Ranger. Now doesn't, but he was pretty committed to that. My generation even can't imagine what it was like getting the draft notice in the mail. I've never spoke to someone about that. You just knew what it was the minute you saw it. Do you remember?
Yeah.
Were you in the kitchen? Well, what happened?
Well, when I got home from work, there was this letter for me, and as I remember, it was from the United States Army. So I knew they weren't inviting me to a party.
No.
Yeah. Now I didn't. I knew that it was either I was being drafted, or something changed in my status as far as
Okay.
because you had to register. I mean, you had
Yeah.
to register, and the acceptance of doing that, you could tell the difference between somebody that's drafted and somebody joined. It was
Okay.
night and day. It wasn't like the person that joined was, oh boy, and the person that got drafted said, oh boy. No.
No.
The ones that got drafted were unhappy, and the ones that were joining, that's what they wanted to do, you know. But I did it, and I spent 15 months in Korea, and I made the best of it, you know.
What were you doing?
I was in infantry,
Were you?
yeah.
So suddenly, instead of being in a shop with your head inside a cylinder head,
Yeah,
you're holding a gun,
yeah,
shooting at people you didn't
didn't know.
really want to shoot at, probably.
But, yeah,
Jeez.
yeah, it was a weird deal, you know. It was a weird deal.
Did you learn anything during that? What did you learn about us humans?
I grew up a lot.
Did you?
Yeah, I grew up a lot. I think I grew up from being a teenager to an adult, and that's not bad.
No.
No, it taught me respect. It is an experience that it is hard to explain to somebody what you went through. I remember when I got drafted, people would say to me, "Well, you never know. You could end up going to Europe, or you could go to here or there or whatever. You don't necessarily go to Korea." And I told them, I said, "Let me tell you something. We're right in the middle of the Korean War, and they drafted me in the Army.
Yeah.
They didn't draft me to send me to Hawaii,
No.
you know." And I went through. In fact, I went to Fort Ord, which is right where Laguna Seca is.
Yeah.
And I went through 8 weeks of basic training, infantry training. Then at the end of 8 weeks, there'll be a notice put on the bulletin board, and it'll tell you whether you're going to further training, you're going to be a truck driver, you're going to be a cook, or they're going to send you to this school or that school, or you're going to advanced infantry training. I got advanced infantry training because they didn't draft me to be a cook or a
Or they didn't draft you to be an engine builder, right?
no,
mechanic.
no. They drafted me to hold a rifle and get over there. So anyway, I went there, and I remember it was a rude awakening. I remember when I got there, you got off the ship, and because I went to Japan first, for 2 weeks on the ocean, and I was in Japan for probably 2 days, and they take away your clothes and they give you all the fatigues and stuff you're going to wear in Korea. And I remember when I got to Korea, I got off the truck, and you go to the main office, and there's a bulletin board, and you look for your name, and it tells you what. And it said, "I'm now going to the 25th Infantry Division." So I said, okay. So then I get on a truck, and it takes you to the 25th Infantry Division. Then you get off and you go to another office, and there's a list of names, and it tells you, "I'm going to the 14th Infantry Regiment."
Oh.
And I read that, and then you get on the trucks, and it takes you to the next place. And I get off, and I go to the main. Now you're going from office to a tent to almost nothing, and there's a tree with a paper on it, and it says you're now going to Able Company. So I get to Able Company, and I'm, because what you're doing is they're putting you in the company, they're putting you in an area where men have gone home or been killed. You're going to replace them.
Yeah.
And I remember when I got to the Able Company, they told me that first night there in Korea, they put me on guard duty, and you go on guard duty for 4 hours at a time. 4 hours at a time. And I remember they told me that what I'm going to be is I'm going to be a guard at GRS. Well, I had no idea what GRS was. And I remember that I was there from midnight. I think my first deal on guard duty was for 2 hours. And I was there from 12 to 2. And it was a GRS tent. And I was going back and forth, as you do with a rifle over your shoulder.
Yeah.
And I got inquisitive what was in the tent. And I went in the tent. It was all dead bodies.
Oh, jeez.
American soldiers that had been killed.
That was your first night?
The first night. And I remember I walked in there because I saw all these bags.
Yeah.
And the zippers were all up on them. So, I mean, I knew there was dead bodies in there. And there was one that the bag hadn't been sealed up yet. And there was this guy there, and his arm was blown off. There's just a stub hanging there. That was the rude awakening that I got. That's what really made me realize.
You were a long way from Los Angeles.
A long way from Los Angeles, and yeah.
Wow. Well, I mean, it must, as you say, you came back with discipline, and probably once you got back, that's really I mean, you were already well underway by 1950, but I mean, the energy of being back here must have felt incredible to you, wasn't it? Get home to girls and booze and life. It must have
cars
and cars, right?
Cars, yeah.
You must have been like, what? What was the first thing you did when you got back off the boat?
When I came home,
Yeah.
first thing I did was
Buy your car back?
no. I to this day I don't remember who I sold it to. But there's a story behind that because a friend of mine found the car.
No.
Oh yeah, that's it.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But anyway, I remember when I got home, they told me that they had to do some processing. Then I was relieved for 10 days. I could go home. And I remember I checked on the airlines, and I checked on the Greyhound bus, and they weren't quite leaving when I wanted to leave. So I said, the heck with it. I'm getting out on the road, and I'm going to hitchhike home.
You did.
Yeah, so I hitchhiked home.
From
Camp Stoneman up in San Francisco.
Jeez.
Yeah, that's how bad I wanted to get home. I didn't want to wait for the bus or the airplane or nothing. I just got out on the road and put my thumb out and hitchhiked home, and I got picked up by quite a few people, you know, and I remember I got let off on I don't remember the name of the city. It's just up from Los Angeles.
Yeah.
I don't remember. It could have been Modesto or one of those. And I'm hitchhiking, and this guy picks me up, and he looked familiar, but I couldn't place it.
Yeah.
And I'm riding, and he was coming to Los Angeles, and he dropped me off at my uncle's hot dog stand, Pink's Hot Dogs on Melrose, La Brea.
No way.
And it was Rock Hudson.
No.
Yeah, but I knew he looked familiar, but it was Rock Hudson that picked me up and dropped me there.
Jeez.
And then my uncle had one of his guys take me home. And knocked on the door, and my mother almost fainted when she saw me.
Wow.
Yeah.
What an experience. What a moment.
Yeah.
Wow. Just incredible. So there you are, you're back. You must have just felt ready to go. To catch up on lost time, really, right? To get building engines and get racing?
I was learning, the thing is, before I went, a fellow by the name of Lou Bainey hired me. And he and I became really good friends, and I was his apprentice, working at his shop. But over the years, before I went into business for myself, I worked for a lot of good people. I worked for Eddie Meyer.
Yeah,
and
I read that. Is it a bit like a chef working under other chefs? You know, any top chef you meet will say, "Oh, I worked for him in Paris, and I worked for him in London." Is it?
No, I was too young then. I was like a big sponge.
So you just took it all in.
I just took it all in. You know, I was very friendly with Vic Edelbrock Sr.
Yeah.
And I'd hang out there, and Frank Barron and Bobby Meeks and Don Toll. I mean, all the real heavy hitters in the business. I was very friendly with, and they took me in. And like I say, I was like a big sponge. I kept my mouth shut and my ears open.
Yeah. Talking about your ears, how are you able to hear so well?
It's amazing.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Nearly everyone else in our business is deaf.
Yeah.
Especially the engine builders.
Especially if you go through drag racing.
Yeah.
Yeah, with the blown fuelers, because, you know, back in that day, we didn't have the earphones to put on, and we never thought about it.
Yeah. Never thought of it. But you must be just genetically lucky. That's it.
Yeah, I'm just lucky. Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, if I'm someplace like in a restaurant and it's real noisy in there, I have a hard time hearing because of all the peripheral noise going on. But like right now, I don't have a problem. You know,
it's incredible. Well, no, I was thinking when I was coming here, I was going, I hope Ed can hear all right. But he seemed to hear all right the other night when we were talking.
Yeah.
So. Now, as someone that grew up in the UK, I mean, obviously, I was born in '68, so the hot rodding thing was obviously had been before that. What was it like growing up in your 20s when the hot rod scene in America, like the car behind you, exploded? What was it? Was it a feeling of the sky was the limit? You could do what you just used your imagination and made it happen? What was it like?
It was, you know, the thing is this: when you're young and you're going through something like that's new, that you're a pioneer in, you don't think about that.
Yeah, that's true.
See, and when you get older and you realize what you went through, that's when you have a real appreciation for what you did or what you've gone through and the people you met. You know, like if I'd have known better when I was going through all this, I'd have had some kind of a camera taking pictures of stuff.
Yeah, that's true.
But I don't have very many pictures of that back in the day. I remember when I went to work for Lou Bainey, and I was learning how to be a mechanic, how to be an engine person, and a fellow by the name of a journalist by the name of Louis Hotchman was doing a story on Lou's shop, and he called it Hot Rod Heaven. And in the story, he writes about Ed Pink, Lou Bainey's star mechanic. I was the only mechanic. There was nobody else. It was me. I cleaned the floors and cleaned this, and I mean, that's, you know. But he put me as a star mechanic. Well, I was the only mechanic. There was nobody else.
That's so funny. What was the so hot rods led to drag racing, right? I mean, you'd take them out to the desert and run these things. Where else did you run them? I mean,
well, no. To start with, there was no drag racing.
Oh, okay.
It was El Mirage Dry Lake. And that's speed trials, and then they went to Bonneville. And then that's about the time that drag racing got started.
Okay.
And I remember I went to one of the very first drag meets was up in Coalingus, which is up North California, up near Goleta.
Yeah.
And it just the hot rodding thing just took off, you know. And there was drag racing all over. Not just Saturday and Sunday, but they were during the week, Friday nights, Wednesday nights, and there was a lot of street racing going on.
So where would they street race around here in LA? Where was the sort of hot spot for street racing?
Well, Sepulveda Boulevard would be a place.
Really?
Oh, yeah. But see, you're thinking of Sepulveda the way it is now. Back then, it was a 2-lane highway, and there weren't near the amount of cars.
Yeah.
Uh,
So they just block it off, and you just run it.
no, they wouldn't exactly block it off.
Oh, really?
Yeah. They had quite a few accidents,
Really?
and there was a few people got killed. You know,
And so was it like the police were just all over you the whole time?
they tried to be. Yeah.
Really?
And what we do is there was various drive-ins that we go to. One up in L.A., top of Stocker, called the Witch Stand.
Mm.
And there's, in Culver City there was DeMay's, and in Inglewood there was one, and then in Culver City there was a hot dog stand called Dopey's, and it was right across the street from Sandy Ballon's muffler shop, where they built the Ballon Indycar.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but you know what we do is to try to divert ourselves from the police. We'd say I'd say 10 or 12 guys take off, but they weren't racing. They were
Like decoys?
they're the decoys, and they took off, and the police would kind of follow them. And then the guys that were going to race, they took off, and they went the other direction. But finally, the police got a wind of that. But then Wally Parks from NHRA came by and got that thing going and started making organized drag racing to get the drag racing off the street. Because, you know, being a drag racer, a hot rodder, was almost like being a convict. You know, people looked down at you. And, they used to call us greasers.
How could you make a decent living at that time making engines for people, or was it because there was no commercial side to it, right? It was.
Well, back in that day, I wasn't doing engines. I was a mechanic.
Oh, you're a mechanic. All
I was
right.
a mechanic. And every once in a while, working for Lou Bainey, we'd get somebody needed an engine done, and we'd do an engine. But
Yeah.
we're talking about Ford flathead engine.
Yeah.
You know, the whole engine would cost back in that day $300 to build an engine. And, that's kind of how I came up. And I worked in a lot of different shops doing brake jobs, doing rebuilds, doing tune-up, trying to find out what I liked. And it ended up that what I liked the best was engines. I didn't like working on cars. I didn't like doing brake jobs. I mean, I did them, but that isn't what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And I was trying to find where my niche in life would be. And so like I say, I worked at a brake shop. I worked at tune-up shops. I worked at engine rebuild shops. I worked at brake shops.
What made you? So when you realized you wanted to do engines, you obviously had to become good at doing it, right? I mean, otherwise you, as you say, if it doesn't last and it isn't fast, you're not gonna have a job.
Yeah, no, you gotta, but I started. You try to get myself established in the engine business by having my own race car.
Yeah, I read that.
Yeah, I built my own dragster, and what really got me going, really got me off the ground, was a fellow by the name of Don Long that builds chassis.
Mm.
He was trying to get himself going. He built good stuff, and he was an engineer, and but he couldn't get over the hump like me.
Yeah.
So he and I got together, and he said, I'm going to build you, what I'd like to do is build you a car. You furnish the engine, you run the car, and let's see what we can do.
Yeah.
And I thought about it, and I agreed to it, and he and I got together, and he built the car, and I built the engine, and the car was a winner right from the start. It beat a lot of people, and and we didn't have engine problems. We did a test for Goodyear at Irwindale, and a fellow by Tom McEwen, the mongoose, was driving the car, and we tested for 4 days, And in 4 days, I made 20. He made 27 runs with the car, and we never had the cylinder heads off at once.
Wow.
That kind of stuff gets around.
Yeah, yeah.
And that was kind of the start.
That was kind of good for business.
Yeah. But my philosophy in the engine business has always been, you got to make it live first, then make it go fast.
Yeah.
You can't do it the other way.
How fast, how rapidly did drag racing become commercial then? Because obviously the snake and mongoose history is huge.
Yeah.
I'm going to talk to Don in a couple of weeks.
All right, good.
Yeah, it'd be great. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, we did engines for him too.
Yeah, so how? Because I want to ask about, you did Ford and Chevy, obviously, but which seems unusual.
Most of the ones in drag racing we did were Chrysler.
Chrysler,
Yeah,
Chrysler.
right,
Ford,
most
yeah.
were Chrysler.
Yeah.
And it ended up we did engines for Lou Baney. Now here's the fun part of that story is he's the guy I went to work for when I was 17, 18 years old to try to learn the business. Now here I am, 30 years old, and I'm doing engines for him.
Yeah.
And then one day he called me and he says, I want to come out tomorrow and have lunch. I want to talk to you. I said, okay. So he came out the next day and we had lunch. And he says, I think I want to run a Ford in my dragster. I said, Lou, why? The Chrysler's running good. You're winning races. He says, but I got a Ford agency. It would look a lot better with Ford and my relationships if we ran a Ford.
Yeah.
And I says, well, what would you run? He says, that new camera they have. I said, okay. So at the time, McEwen was his driver. So McEwen and Baney and myself got on a plane, went to Dearborn, and we had a meeting with one of the head guys at Ford, and Lou put together a deal to run the dragster with the camera engine. So then they send me the camera engine, and we had to develop it because the engine, the camera was originally done for NASCAR.
Okay.
But somebody screwed up along the way because NASCAR says no overhead cam. And this engine's a single overhead cam. So then Ford says, well, we got this engine. What are we going to do with it? And somebody had the bright idea, well, give it to the drag racers. And that's how the drag racers got it.
Wild.
And Connie Coletta got it, and he did really well with it. But he's not in the engine business. He's racing. So he's not selling engines. So Ford was very enthused the fact that Lou owned a Ford agency and wanted to run the Ford, and that he had me as an engine builder, because here, if other people want to buy the engine, they have somebody to build it for them and sell it to them. So that's, so then we went through that whole development program with the Ford. Yeah.
But back to the bit about, so once drag racing became official and got taken off the streets, did it take off quick?
Yes.
Did it?
It was like a snowball rolling down the hill.
Was it?
Oh, yeah.
And you were just part of that?
Part of that,
But so suddenly you went from running out the back of diners to go down Sepulveda to you were on proper drag strips and what I mean, it makes sense to me that the demands would change because they're not driving the car on the road. It's now purpose-built race engine.
Purpose-built, yeah.
How did that change your mentality? Because now it needed to do a lot of runs, I guess, but it just needed to get on it.
The thing is this, that the street racing thing was done on gasoline.
Yeah.
So now we've gone from gasoline to alcohol or nitromethane, and the whole thing just stepped right up, and it was just like a snowball going down the hill. I mean, it was growing faster than you would expect it to do. When the drag racing got big, Bonneville got big.
Yeah. Any funny memories of those moments? The guys, there must have been you were all young guys, right?
Yeah.
Any particular memories of that time?
That gets back to the book I'm doing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you're going to do the book.
We're doing a book. Hopefully it'll be done next year sometime.
Perfect.
Probably towards the end of the year. It's got my whole history from when I actually started and it goes from drag racing to Bonneville. It goes from the dry lakes to Bonneville salt flats to drag racing to Indycars to sports cars to midgets to Silver Crown to sprint cars to off-road racing to drifting, and sports cars. And I've been fortunate to be involved in all these different aspects, and they all have great stories behind them.
It'll be so
people
good.
Really enjoy reading the book.
Yeah, I bet.
It isn't an I book. It isn't a thing about Ed Pink this, Ed Pink that. It's a story about the various racing that I've been involved with all the people that I've been involved with.
Who was your biggest buddy at that time? Who was your biggest friend at that time? Best friend? Who was your best friend during that time? Or was it just a big community?
It was just a big community.
Was it?
It wasn't any one particular
Okay.
person, you know.
Were you married?
Yes.
Oh, you got married young.
I got married young. I got married when I came home from the Army, because I guess I thought that was the thing to do.
Yeah.
But it didn't last.
Okay.
And it was over with. And the lady that I'm with now, Sylvia, we've been together 46 years.
That's amazing.
So I'd say this one's the real deal.
This is the real deal. I think
she's
she's probably a keeper at this point, right?
Yeah, oh yeah. Without
That's
a doubt. I'm very fortunate to have met her, and
that's wonderful.
yeah.
Wow. Were the girls on the scene though? Did the drag racing attract the girls like road racing did?
Pretty much so, but I didn't really pay any attention to that. I was into engines. I mean, my whole deal was the engine, and it had to be the best one out there. And
maybe that's why I wouldn't have been a good engine builder.
Well, to me, those engines are my kids.
Yeah.
You know, and I still do. I love the engines. I love the challenge of it, and that's what's kept me going.
Yeah.
I mean, if I would have been stuck doing just, say, one engine, say, for example, basically the first real ones I did professionally would be drag racing. If I was told that I had to stay in drag racing and I could never do any other engines but drag racing, I'd have retired a long time ago. I'd have just got burned out. But to me, when I went from drag racing to Indy cars, I went, oh boy.
I bet. A new challenge.
Yeah, it's a new challenge. And when I went to sports cars with a Porsche, that was another one.
Yeah.
I couldn't wait to get going on it.
Yeah. I love the fact that is one of the racing never stands still. That's what you said at the beginning. It just always is evolving, right? Everything.
Right. Yeah.
What was Bonneville like? I've never been. I've always wanted to go.
You should need to go there.
Really?
If you only go once. Yeah, Bonneville, the salt flats, it's huge, and that's where they go 400 miles an hour.
Yeah. What was the fastest run one of your engines did?
I think fastest is about 200.
Wow, really? Yeah.
In fact, I ran Bonneville with my 36 coupe.
Did you?
Yeah, I ran 139.
Wow,
This
cool.
is back in 1950.
It must have been amazing watching, because the Bluebird went out there, didn't it?
Yeah.
Campbell and those, crazy speeds. Unbelievable.
And
Mickey Thompson, yeah.
And there was a fella at Busby's party. I don't know if you probably don't know his name, Al Teague. So in 1953, maybe 1954, he ran 400 miles an hour to the salt.
In 54?
Yeah, it was early 50s.
Jeez.
Yeah. And then there was Kenton Leslie from Colorado. They first came in with a Model A pickup truck with an engine in the front and an engine in the back. 2 engines.
That's wild.
Yeah. Then they got the Streamliner that Ron Leslie, his driver, or his partner in the Ford business up in Denver. He drove it.
Wow.
In fact, there's a picture on the wall back there. I'll show you.
Oh, yeah, I'd love to see
of
it.
their car.
Yeah. When you went to Indycar, you got there at a time. Indycar was very dangerous at that time, right? The 70s were a very dangerous time.
Yeah, I got at the end of it.
You got the end of the really dangerous period.
Yeah. We started in 1977.
Okay.
And that's, there's already pretty much the rear engine car had taken over from the Roadster. And the Offie was kind of on its way out in the Cosworth.
Was it exciting walking into the Speedway for the first time?
Yep. Yep. Especially when you stand there at the starting line and you look down towards turn one, and you can't imagine somebody going 230 miles an hour into that corner and not lifting.
Yeah. You can't, can you? As a driver,
yeah.
I went there and I'm looking at it going, I wish I hadn't seen that. I'd rather be in the car than out of the car.
Yeah.
You know, watching them go through there.
Yeah.
Well, when you hear, and as a kid going to watch Dad race all over the world, you know, I always used to try and sneak out and go beside the straights and listen. You know, it was just really powerful. Even at Le Mans, wow, and they'd come by. I was doing it with no technical knowledge. I just was always impressed just about how the cars could go through the air that fast. And I thought about the driver because I thought about my dad inside.
Sure.
But I also always thought about not knowing anything about engines, really. I always thought of all those parts at that incredible frequency inside and how they were propelling this vehicle. As an engine builder, when you heard one of your engines come by, you've touched every piece of it. What's it like knowing at full revs as they come down the straight? You can visualize everything that's going on, right? Inside.
When you first do it,
yeah,
you're sitting there holding your breath.
Really?
Now, you know, because you run one on a dyno is one thing, but when it's in the car for the very first time, like for me, you know, never being involved with Indy cars, and then going from drag racing to Indy cars, going from a quarter of a mile to this.
Yeah.
I mean, I held my breath a few times.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah. It really gets your attention because you realize that if that engine should fail when they're in the turn, and they could end a horrific accident.
Yeah. There's a responsibility for that.
Yeah.
Wow. What do you think about the engines that we have today in these road cars? It's amazing through legislation what they've had to do to road engines, isn't it? I mean, the efficiency we have, the emissions we have.
And they'll get better.
They will.
Yeah, I think absolutely. I think that, of course, you know, this electric car stuff where they're forcing it. You know, if you want an electric car, you should buy it because you want it, not because you're being told you have to have it.
Yeah.
That's the part that pisses me off. You know, and going from an internal combustion engine car to an electric car, you're not going from problems to nothing. You're going to a new set of problems.
Yeah. On so many levels.
Yeah. The problem is you got people making the rules that don't know what they're doing.
No.
Don't have a clue.
And the actual efficiency of a modern internal combustion engine is so great, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
and it's getting better all the time, you know.
Amazing. I mean, the fact that you've got all the, you can shut down cylinders on the highway and it goes from 8 to 4 and, you know, I mean, crazy stuff if you think back to when you started.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Amazing. I wonder what, you know, I get asked all the time, oh, you know, what do you think about racing with electric cars? And I'm like, oh, you know, these things will happen. Hybrids are a big part of sports car IMSA for next year, but which is amazing. I mean, the technology is amazing, and and the manufacturers are supporting it in a big way, which is good. But I don't think anyone's going to stand on a drag strip and gasp and have the air taken out of their lungs when an electric drag goes off, right?
Yeah, you're going to have a problem with getting spectators.
Yeah.
Because, for drag racing, people come because they want to see the smoky burnouts and they want to hear the noise and the smell. In Indy, I mean, when you're sitting in the stands and you're listening to them cars go down, I mean, that puts goosebumps on you.
It does, yeah.
Absolutely.
There was even when they play, when they show Formula One, there's a lot of videos on YouTube right now, when they had the big V12s and the Ferrari engines, and the engines sounded the best they ever had, right? Wow.
The sounds is half the battle.
Yeah.
In some cases, it's more than half.
Yeah. Did you ever get asked to do a Formula One engine?
No.
No?
No.
Would have been interesting.
Yeah. No, I never. The two that I've never really got involved with was Formula One, as much as I like watching it.
Yeah.
Nothing Formula One, and not NASCAR either. I did a little bit with NASCAR. We designed a dry sump oil pump that quite a few teams used to run.
Yeah.
But I'd say the majority of what I've been in is drag racing, Indycar, sports car, then midgets, Silver Crown, sprint car, off-road.
I bet you can't even work out how many races you've been to.
No.
Thousands.
Yeah.
Thousands.
It's been a great career.
Hasn't it?
Yeah. The people I've met that I've become really good friends with, that have been customers, I pinch myself sometimes. Think, God, that's so lucky.
Your life.
Yeah.
No, it really is amazing to still be around, still respect, and you're building an engine now.
I got one left to do. We did 6 engines. We did 2 Ford flatheads because that's what I started with.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, that's what I started with, and these 2 friends of mine wanted engines. One was for a fellow by the name of Ross Meyer, who lives in Pennsylvania, and the other one was for another fellow named Dick DeLuna, lives up in San Francisco. And but they look like flatheads, but they got all the latest technology as far as crankshafts and rods and pistons and all that kind of stuff. And then being we did the Ford single red cam engine, it's funny how when you do a certain engine, all of a sudden you get labeled. That's the engine you do. And if later you do another engine, all of a sudden you get labeled for that one.
Yeah.
So, but the last drag race engine I did professionally was the Ford Camry. So people came out of the woodwork and wanted Camrys built for their classic cars.
Yeah.
So we're due 4 of them. 3 of them are done and shipped, and on the last one now.
Are you doing it 100% yourself?
No, I have one guy that helps me.
Okay.
No, it's too much for me by myself.
I bet it is. But who would have thought, and certainly not the 20-year-old Ed Pink, that 70 years later, you would still be building an engine.
Yeah. No.
Your hands would work, your mind would work.
Yeah.
Have you been healthy?
Yeah.
Have you?
I've had a few things go on, but
Yeah.
I don't think you can escape
No.
100%. But for the most part, yeah, I've been healthy and I still drive. I have people ask me, "You still drive?"
Yeah, well, I saw that fancy sports car outside.
Yeah.
I thought, is that Ed's car?
Yeah, yes, it is.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
Oh, I know what a question I want to ask you. In sports car racing, as you know, and Indycar racing, it's about making the engines last, and I get that. But it blows my mind. I remember I went to Vegas and was watching them strip the engine in between runs on a top fuel
On a dragster. Yeah.
dragster. Was that going on when you were doing it? No.
No.
When did that come in? Because that seems like outrageous.
That came in about the time I was leaving. I could see the handwriting on the wall because
Okay.
it was probably 1975, 76, right? In that
Yeah.
area, is the sponsors started coming in. So when the sponsors come in, there's more money to spend, and the guys weren't spending the money on hotels.
Yeah.
They're spending on better parts for their car, hiring better people. And I could see that all of a sudden, the amount of engines that I was building was starting to go down, and the teams were building the engines themselves. And then the teams were buying parts themselves. So I remember one of the piston manufacturers, I went out to see him. I said, you're trying to put me out of business. I says, the only people there are that I can sell pistons to are the racers. And if you're selling them to them, who do I have left to sell? But I understand,
Mm.
So so my business started slowly going down, and all of a sudden I find that I'm spending the majority of my time on the telephone with people that have problems.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, how can I make money doing that? So I spend too much time on the phone because the guy has a problem, and I help them, but yet they're building their own engines and buying the parts.
You could just see it was changing.
It was changing, and we were doing a few engines, and we were selling a little bit of parts. We were doing machine work, and lots of consultation.
Yeah.
And just in the book, it tells you how all of a sudden the Indycar thing started.
Perfect timing.
It was the time I've been, knock on wood, I've been lucky. I've been at the right place at the right time when the drag racing started to go away, the Indycar, and when the Indycar started going away, the sports car.
Mm.
And I just
Perfect.
been lucky the timing.
Yeah. That's right. Don't worry. Should I hit answer?
No, I don't
It
have
turns
to
off.
answer it.
I can cut this bit out. I haven't had an answering machine in a while. So it's an awful question, but I'm going to ask it because I always
It's okay.
Did anyone die in your car in one of your cars?
No, thank God, no.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Jesus, that's lucky.
I had a race at Long Beach drag strip where we were racing a guy that got killed.
Hmm.
But thank God it wasn't in my car.
I always think that about the mechanics or the engineers, because someone was there, right? Someone, but I'd never thought about it from an engine builder's point of view. But yeah, okay,
Yeah. No,
that was fortunate.
I was very fortunate.
Yeah,
You know.
too many people did get killed, but like you were saying, everyone was just doing it. There was a sense of adventure.
Yeah.
Safety was not what people thought about.
No, it was just doing the thing.
Yeah, amazing. I had no clue your uncle was Pink's Hot Dogs.
Yeah.
That's-
My dad's brother.
Your dad's brother.
Yeah. He was an accountant, and he didn't like being an accountant, and he needed to have something to do. And his wife was in the florist business. She had a florist stand right in that area of Innocent in Melrose, La Brea. And so my uncle didn't like being an accountant, so he got himself a little push cart. And he was parked on the corner of Melrose, La Brea with his push cart selling hot dogs. And he's a real character. He's the one that everybody liked. He's always had stories and jokes, and he talked to everybody, and it was just one of those kind of guys. And it finally kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and he built a small little hot dog stand, permanent, there on the corner, and it did so good. He put another room on it, another room, and another room.
Same location.
Same location. 1938 is when he started, and still that original place is still there.
Yeah.
But it's had all these different rooms put on it. And he had back in that day, he had quite a few movie stars that used to hang out there.
Well, Rock Hudson knew where to take you.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah. Amazing.
That's an amazing piece of family history.
Yeah, and he died. I don't remember what year it was. It's been a while ago. He was 85 years old. He died the way you want to die. He had a little office at the back, at the hot dog stand, and he was in there doing some book work, and he just dropped over dead.
Did he?
Didn't suffer. Didn't.
That's the way you want to go.
Yeah, just all of a sudden, that's it. And his daughter and son and daughter-in-law took over the hot dog stand. They've done a remarkable job.
They still own it?
Oh, yeah.
It's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah.
So most people, so a whole group of people know him, and a whole group of his whole people know there's probably crazy Ed Pink who does the engines,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. That was a great time.
Good times, right?
And the book goes into all that.
Does it good?
Oh, yeah. It goes into details on stuff. Like my 36, how that all of a sudden reappeared.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to reading
Yeah.
that. That'd be good. So as you sit here at 90, what are you, 90?
91.
91.
I'll be 92 in February.
What date?
10th.
I'm the 23rd. Yeah. Just only someone of your generation can think about it. There were no, phones. We had phones, but
There's no such thing as a cell phone.
Cell phones.
You're driving down the street and you think you'll have somebody you call. You find a phone booth and pull over and go in a phone booth.
And hope they were the other end, right?
Yeah,
there was no
yeah,
guaranteeing.
yeah.
For you, what was the biggest, the most? What piece of technology had the most impact on you in your life? Do you think?
Well, I don't know if there's one that's the most.
So many.
Television,
Yeah.
the internet.
Yeah.
The internet, my way of thinking, this is just my opinion, it was a great thing, and it's a terrible thing.
Yeah.
I think it's as bad as it is good, because it made people lazy.
It did.
Yeah.
I was listening to someone talk the other day on the radio on a podcast about going to the library. We had to go to the library, right? If you wanted to find something out, you went to the library. My daughter can find anything about anything
In a matter of minutes.
in seconds on the web,
Yeah.
which is good and bad, but she doesn't know about the library in the same way.
Yeah.
It's. Are you glad that you lived in the century you lived in?
Yes.
Not the one we've got coming up?
No. I think I lived in the best of times. I think the racing was the best. Back in the early days, I think the drag racing was the greatest. Now it's so commercialized and NHRA, it did nothing about it. They just kept doing it, and now it's got to the point where there's nothing they can do. If they make a change to slow the cars down, they'll put everybody out of business.
Yeah. What do you think about people? Have people changed for the better, or they've changed for the worse? There was a sort of honor, there was a sort of kindness about the era you came out of.
Yeah.
I don't think people have that.
No. And I think the internet has a lot to do with it.
Okay.
People are in a big-ass hurry now. They're in a big hurry to get by all the cars to get up to the next red light to stop. And it's not a happy existence like it used to be.
Just look at the news.
Yeah. It's. I wouldn't want to be bringing kids up today.
Yeah.
No, I think the area that I grew up in, I think I think about the way it is today, and I wouldn't want to get started today. Of course, if you're getting started today, you don't know how it was
No.
so you don't know how it was. You think this is it. This is the way it's always been. But I think the generation that I have grown up in and lived, they appreciate stuff. They don't look out to see what you're going to do for me instead of what I'm going to do for me.
Do you have grandkids?
Yeah, I got a son and a daughter.
Okay.
My son lives in Charlotte, North Carolina.
Yeah.
And my daughter lives in Oxnard. And I have my son, I have 2 grandkids with him. He has a boy and a girl.
Yeah.
And my daughter has a daughter, and she got married, and so I'm a great-grand.
Wow.
Yeah.
Before we close it, what advice would you like to give them? If they could, your grandkids, about how to live life. What's the Ed Pink message for life?
Respect the people. Respect people, and I think respect is having respect for people, which the respect is gone today. You work at something, and the harder you work, the better you get. My generation made their own way through they didn't rely on somebody else doing it for them. And people expect too much from other people. They just need to think about it and do it for themselves.
I think that's pretty good advice, Ed.
Yeah, I don't know.
It is. I think if you took a bit more if people took a bit more responsibility for their actions, I think we'd be in a better place.
Yeah. Just like, I read a deal that pretty well sums it up. This man and his daughter, the daughter believed that if you have a lot of money, you should be sharing it with her. It isn't fair that you should have all that and she has nothing. So you have to share with her. But then she's in college, and she got straight, what was the highest, 4?
Yeah, 4, I think,
okay.
yeah.
So she got the highest grade for 2 years in a row in college, 4. But her girlfriend, very close friend, only got 2. She wasn't doing good at all. So her dad says, well, why don't you give your friend, help her so she can get a better grade. And let's say we'll take half of your grade and we'll give it to her because she's your friend, right? And we'll get her up. And the girl says, no, we can't do that, Dad. I worked too hard for it. Right?
Sums it up.
Yeah.
Sums it up. Wow. Well, listen, Ed, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
It was really great. Let's look at some of these pictures. I'm going to take your portrait if we could.
Sure.
I just want to do it in front of the car. It would be and then take a look at that engine. Well done. This was a real treat.
Good.
I'm glad we did it.
I'm glad you did too.
Yeah, thank you. And I can't wait for the book. What are you going to call it?
We don't have a name for it yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My engine doesn't pink.
And,
My engine pinks.
I'm not sure, but it's when I first started, what got me to do it was a fellow. Did you know Tom Madigan?
I think I do. Yeah.
Okay, he's a journalist.
Yeah.
And he's written a lot of books, and he died. And he and I were really good friends. He did a lot of stories on me over the years in different magazines and so forth. And he used to bug me all the time. You need to do a book. He says, with all the things you've done and all the various race,
Keep going.
all the race engines you've done, and it's a story that needs to get out there. And I said, well, yeah, I don't know. I'm too busy doing engines now. And he used to tell me, he'd say, Ed, you need to do a book. You don't have to do a technical book, just a book on your life.
Really?
Of all the stuff you've done.
Yeah.
And I said, well, Tom, I don't have time right now. He says, well, you need to make time. He says, let me tell you something. When you die, all those great stories are going to go with you. Nobody's ever going to get to hear them.
No, exactly.
And that's kind of what got me to the point where I thought, I need to do this book. And Steve Lewis, you know Steve Lewis? He's the one that used to own PRI.
Oh, okay, yes.
And he owned the magazine. And he owned the midget team called the Number 9 cars.
Yeah.
So, anyway.
So that's what's gonna. That's funny. Okay. Wow. That's so cool.
Anyway, I didn't know who to, and Tom was going to do the book, and he died, so I didn't know who else to have do it. I know a lot of guys that are journalists, but I don't know if they'd be the one to do the book. So I called Steve Lewis, and he says, the guy you want to get is Bones Brochure.
So it's going to be so good to see.
Yeah.
I love it.
So, and the more I got into it with him, the more I realized that it's a good thing. I mean, because, like I say, it's not a technical book. There's a few things in there that are technology, but the 90% of it is human interest. And it's about all the racing series that I got in and how I got into them. Like, the Porsche story is a hell of a story, and we didn't really cover it like it. We covered just the bits of it. Yeah. But it was a big involved deal.
I bet it was. Yeah.
And the midget thing with Steve Lewis and the sprint cars, and just all of it. And it tells all the people that I've been involved with over the years. Besides Jim Busby, there's Foyt, and there's Ari Lyondike, and it's on.
Stories about all those guys.
All the stories. It isn't saying, yeah, I did engines for Ari Lyondike.
Yeah.
It gets into how Ari and I met and what we went through and the funny things, and the same with Foyt, and all of them.
It's going to be great.
It makes great reading.
Yeah, no, it's great, and it's just great to have that. Everything in your mind downloaded onto pages.
Yeah.
So, because you are part of this history in a big way. So everybody needs to know. That's why it was important for me to get with you, because even though our paths haven't crossed other than a few times socially, it was like, everybody knows of Ed Pink, I was like, God.
And actually, I don't think of it that way.
No.
I just don't,
Well, as you say, when you're in the middle of the action, you're just doing what you do.
You're doing what you do, I mean, back when I got started and was doing it, I never thought that I'd get put in Hall of Fame,
No.
that I would get that kind of notoriety and stuff. It never dawned on me. I didn't do it for that.
Yeah.
I did it because I love the engines. I love the people I did them for. I love the success of winning, and with me, I didn't like to just win. I like to blow their ass off.
I think that should be the last thing we say.
Yeah. But I mean, yeah, it wasn't a matter of just doing it to win a race.
No.
I wanted to be the guy.
It's brilliant.
Yeah.
Good for you, Ed.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
That was so good.
Yeah.
That was really great.